Hey guys, so I have a video for you right now because it seems like by the day, like every single day, we're seeing more and more Republicans, coming out and publicly going against Trump. Now I came across this video. This is by Caitlin Collins. They're interviewing Don Bacon, Representative Don Bacon, and he is speaking out against, against this Ukraine peace deal, which a lot of people are calling right now a surrender deal. They say it's an awful deal. So let's listen to the clip. Anyway, and let's just pay attention to the fact that more Republicans are suddenly not feeling too afraid to come out and, and speak up and criticize Trump and, his decisions. It happened last week too with Lindsey Graham. He was approached by reporters and they were asking, do you agree with the president's, statements in terms of executing these 8 Democrats? But he's on record too saying that was just, too far. That's just too much. But let's start with the CNN video of Don Bacon, Caitlin Collins. So let's watch this.
This is the reaction from a Republican House member who says the European counter plan is 10 times better than the Witkoff Ukrainian surrender plan. That's a reference to the president's senior advisor, Steve Witkoff. This congressman says that the European plan should be the plan and not go backwards because Ukraine is a sovereign state and should not be forced to live on its knees to dictator Putin. I want to go straight to the source of that statement tonight. Congressman Don Bacon of Nebraska joins me now. And Congressman, obviously you feel very strongly about these two dynamics that are at play here. Can I first ask you, do you think it's fair to say that President Zelensky has not said thank you to the United States enough?
No, it's not true, unfortunately, what the president has said and the vice president. They've both made these claims. President Zelensky has thanked the United States and President Trump and President Biden before him many times. And so it's just not being honest. I don't know why the president says this. And he's, I guess they claim it leads to negotiating. I don't see how it does. What I've seen since the president came in, he uses like punching boxing gloves on Zelensky and uses velvet gloves on Putin. And you just see the contrast. One's the invader, though, and one's the victim. One wants democracy, and one is has murdered his rivals. I don't understand why the president keeps abusing and talking down to Zelensky, who wants to be on our side. And Putin hates us. This doesn't make sense. I'm an old Ronald Reagan guy. I believe in peace through strength. Reagan stood up to the Soviet Union or the Russians at the time. Eisenhower did. I don't know why this president can't have moral clarity on what's going on.
What do you think is going to happen with these talks that are playing out?
But what happened Thursday was one of the most embarrassing things I've seen while in office. I put it in the same tier of the botched withdrawal out of Afghanistan, which I thought was an embarrassment as someone who's deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan multiple times. It really bothered me. And then seeing our president like handing over the leadership of the free world and just giving it away and not standing by a country that's being invaded that is a pro-democracy. But if you look at those 28 points that came out last Thursday, they were a surrender. They were basically telling Ukraine to surrender to Russia and be vulnerable to Russian attack for decades to come. It was no way that any American president should have ever signed off on this package. Now, I think since then, the Europeans have weighed in. I think Secretary Rubio, who I respect, has weighed in. And the Ukrainians have weighed in. And I suspect these 28 points have been modified significantly. And I really do think the European plan is something I could live with, I could embrace. I don't think the Russians want it because they want to have Ukraine as a vassal state. And this does not. We want Ukraine to be an independent, sovereign state. And that's not what Russia wants. So that's why we should be providing weapons to Ukraine and putting tough sanctions on Russia, because we've got to break the will of President Putin.
Wow, that was devastating. Very, very devastating. Open message with very open criticism towards Donald Trump and his foreign policy on how to treat dictators who are invading countries, especially countries that happen to be U.S. allies. It makes absolutely zero sense. But one thing that caught my attention is that Don Bacon says that whenever Trump is dealing with Zelensky, he'll put on these boxing gloves, right? He's going to mess him up. He's going to hit him hard. But whenever he's dealing with Putin, then he puts on this silky, velvet gloves, which signals clearly that he's fooling nobody. This is a Republican. This is a career Republican saying we see openly and clearly how Donald Trump has this double standard. I think this is crazy. I think Don Bacon is right. I think they are just pushing a narrative. Who knows why? Look at how they're saying that then the European counter proposal is 10 times better than that of the USA. The USA is drafting this peace deal, this surrender plan right now. Marco Rubio is leading that initiative, for Donald Trump. And it's obviously not going good, But then it doesn't surprise me. Why? Because Donald Trump has always been bending over for Vladimir Putin. Since this whole invasion started, it happened under Biden when it started under Biden, but that since that moment, Donald Trump has always been somehow praising and siding with Vladimir Putin. But then I'm saying that it doesn't surprise me because Donald Trump has always portrayed Zelensky as a guy who is, maybe stupid or weak or not smart. We saw it recently, that Oval Office meeting. Remember when Zelensky was here and they berated, humiliated, insulted, and mocked Zelensky at that meeting in the Oval Office? They jumped him. It was Trump, it was J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio was there, and then some other people also jumping in, all saying these awful things. And then, on the other hand, when we had Vladimir Putin, what did Trump do? He rolled out the red carpet. So it was all, luxury and a VIP treatment for Putin. And not only that, when he's finally approaching Trump on the red carpet, what did Trump do? Trump started clapping. Oh, he was laughing and clapping, smiling, laughing and clapping for a freaking dictator. How does that make any sense at all? Unless he has a crush. There was no red carpet for Zelensky, who happens to be the real hero here. One is a freaking dictator who kills his opponents, who has been awful. He's definitely a monster who doesn't support or, promote democracy at all, And then you have Zelensky, who is fighting for his people, for his country, a country that was invaded. One thing, one of the highlights for me was the moment when Donald Trump told Zelensky, you don't have the cards. You just have to accept whatever I'm saying, whatever we give you, because you don't have the cards. Remember, you don't have the cards. Of course, you don't have the military. You don't have the money. You don't have the means to fight Russia alone. So you can't be demanding stuff. You can't be trying to dictate what should be done. You should be just grateful and shut up, in other words, pretty much, right? When you analyze that statement, you don't have the cards. The thing is, I thought he did. I thought Zelensky and Ukraine did have the cards. Why? Because Zelensky and Ukraine, they are a U.S. ally. And that should mean something, right? If Zelensky, if Ukraine is a U.S. ally, that should mean something. I don't have the cards, but I'm an ally of, this coalition of countries. Precisely for moments like these. Trump has been criticized and the Trump administration because they have demanded little to nothing. They have demanded little to nothing from Russia, while they're asking Zelensky, on the other hand, to pretty much bend over for Russia, for Putin. In Donald Trump's eyes, if you're rich and powerful, you deserve more, right? You can keep asking, you can break the law, you can abuse people, you can, just violate international law and agreements and even create a humanitarian crisis. It doesn't matter, but you're rich and powerful. On the flip side, if you are weak, if you cannot give them a $400 million plane, free plane, right? If you cannot build a $5 billion golf course in Qatar, then you're worthless. You're pretty much worthless in his eyes, which is sad because he claims to be a Christian, right? He claims to be the candidate, the president for the church, the president to defend the Bible, the president who wants to promote Jesus, love and acceptance and salvation message, right? So, yeah, I guess that's why Christians, love him so much. But then the thing is that even though Trump says that Zelensky doesn't have the cards, in all reality, he should, because he has a lot of allies, and allies stick together. And then the sad part is that when you think of this, alliance and how if Ukraine is a U.S. ally, we should be all in stopping Russia and saying, if you're attacking them, you're attacking us. We're gonna keep helping them. And it's kind of funny because if you remember back in September, let me share this screen with you. Back in September, Donald Trump signed an executive order. President Donald Trump pledged that the United States would defend Qatar if it is attacked. The order states that the U.S. shall regard any armed attack on the territory, sovereignty, or critical infrastructure of the state of Qatar as a threat to the peace and security of the United States, and will take all the lawful and appropriate measures, including military action if necessary, to defend it. Oh my God, this is an executive order. It has this completely bypassed Congress. Donald Trump didn't do this with Congress. This is an executive order of Donald Trump pledging to literally defend Qatar militarily if needed. If somebody attacks Qatar, because they were being attacked, and at that point, I think there was some attacks by, I don't know if it was Iran or Israel. There was something going on. But still, Donald Trump said, hey, these people just gave me a plane, $400 million plane. We need to protect these people. We have a $5 billion golf course. We need this region to be stable. Suddenly, even though they have been supporting terrorists and they were not an ally or friend to the U.S. for many years, all of a sudden, Donald Trump, we have businesses that has nothing to do with the fact that I believe that they should suddenly be like an ally. Yeah, and they should have a base in the USA too. But I'm also going to sign an executive order saying that they are a VIP ally at this point. So if you mess with Qatar and you attack them, if we need to even get involved with our military, we're going to do it. But have you seen a similar executive order, for Ukraine? Have you heard Donald Trump telling Vladimir Putin, if you keep attacking Ukraine, we are going to get involved to defend our ally? Man, too bad. Too bad that Zelensky hasn't been able to give a plane, a $400 million plane, or to help them build like a $5 billion golf course. But we're seeing more and more Republicans stand up to Trump, I don't know, just a little bit more than we were used to. And hopefully that's a good sign. Hopefully that's a sign of something. Maybe they are finally starting to get over him. Maybe they're finally fed up and saying, you know what? We should just get rid of the old guy. This old man is completely senile. He's lost it. He's definitely way beyond what we thought we would deem acceptable. We have to do something about it. So hopefully, this may be the start of something good. We may have a little bit of hope that more Republicans by the day are going to keep coming out. But anyway, guys, let's wrap it up. If you like the content and you made it this far, please subscribe, leave a comment, leave a like. That's what's going to really help me a lot. I'm going to try to keep creating content for you guys. It's always going to be free. I'm not going to do any paywalls or anything. I do host a Spanish podcast that is, doing amazing. It's growing a lot. I have a big follower base here on YouTube. If you speak Spanish, or if you know any Spanish speaking, family members, friends, co-workers, just send them to my channel, Aranzamendi Podcast Español. I also help Brian Tyler Cohen with his Spanish channel. So if you can also go to that channel, search for Brian Tyler Cohen Español. Please subscribe, like a couple of videos, leave a couple of comments. That will help us, go a long way so that we can reach more Hispanic, Spanish-speaking people. So, other than that, thank you for tuning in. I'll catch you on the next episode.